Hey everyone, Craig here, and I just wanted to quickly show you kind of some of the progress that we've made with the lab so far. So the Wi-Fi acceptance factor went a bit low and I needed to clean up, so as you can see it's a lot nicer and tidier in here. The lab is actually chugging away quite nicely. If I just swap cameras. Yeah, so the lab's chugging away quite nicely, as you can see. We've still got the same compute and all the rest of that. I've actually taken out the old G5s that were in these units here. Just move my dust mesh out of the way. They're there. We've swapped out the Synology unit now. All the data that was on that has been copied over to these disks in the FreeNAS box. And this is going to consume some of the disks that we had in there, but ultimately that'll disappear as well in the end. I did wake up yesterday and there was something a bit concerning going on. We've got a flashy red light of doom, and it turns out, and this is one of the reasons why I thought FreeNAS might be a little bit upset, is that one of the SSDs has actually failed, and it turns out that it's this one here. It thinks that it's just been pulled out, and I'm not really too sure why. We've got our fiber switch ready to go in now, and they're the G5s that I pulled out. They're not going to go back, and we've got aircon in the corner there as needed. If we go around to the back, it's looking a little bit tidier. I've got my cables hung up quite nice. Yeah, so I've actually got half of these units switched off at the moment. Reason being that the three that are switched off, they're going to be brought into the overt cluster that we've just provisioned. They were previously running VMware, and I'm kind of torn between whether I'm going to keep a VMware cluster running or whether to move all the stuff over to Rev. I've done a fair amount of migration now, and actually it looks pretty good. Yeah, so I've already done a fair amount of moving of all the VMs that were running on that VMware cluster over there. That's all been moved and migrated now onto Rev. So that's ticking along quite nicely, and the performance of it seems to be quite nice. I did run into one problem. The throughput from the storage box was really bad. I'm doing iPerf tests between some of the hosts. So between these compute hosts here and the FreeNAS box down here, it turned out to be really quite bad. So receiving, the FreeNAS box was getting wire speed. It was getting a full 10 gigabit, which was really nice. But as soon as you're trying to do the transmit, it was getting maybe 480 kind of megabits, and no matter what I tried, I couldn't get it to go any higher. It wasn't MTU, it wasn't the fact that it was on VLANs or anything weird like that. And what it turned out to be was the card. So inside of these, it's got a Chelsea T420CR, dual port NIC. Let me see if I've got, what did I do with it? Here we are, my box of tricks. So we had one of these. And these are really nice cards. You know, they're on the, let me just position the camera there. They're on the HCL for FreeBSD and all the rest of that. So, you know, by rights, by definition, this should be good. And this was a brand new card when I got it. It turns out that when I was messing around, so this worked perfectly in CentOS as well, doing iPerf, CentOS, full line speeds. And so all I can imagine is FreeNAS comes with the drivers actually baked into the kernel. And I think what's gone on there is the FreeNAS drivers, the FreeBSD drivers that come along, they're not compatible with the firmware on this. I upgraded, I broke my own rule, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and I upgraded the firmware on it. So the firmware was on something like 1.24, and the stuff that came with the kernel was expecting something like 1.19. So all I ended up doing, I happened to have a new one of these. I swapped it out, put the new one without the upgraded firmware on it, and it's working absolutely fine. So all I can imagine is there's something to do with the firmware on this card, and I didn't really like it. But that solved the issues. It was a really weird one, because I kind of got into the point where I was actually considering ditching FreeNAS again. I was going to, because it worked under CentOS, I was going to switch across to use CentOS and just go from there and have CentOS as my storage provider. Because at the end of the day, all I'm doing really is, I've got a couple of iSCSI targets, and there's a bit of NFS on there for my kind of backups and kind of slow storagey bits. But yeah, I'm glad I managed to find that that's what it was, because I would have been upset having to move off FreeNAS, because I mean, I've said it before, FreeNAS is solid, or it's usually solid. Usually if it's not, you're doing something weird with it, and in this case I'd done something weird. So yeah, I thought I'd give you a quick update. As I said, most of the VMs now are cut across on the lab. So we've got IDMs running on there, my old satellite box is running on there. What else? I've got my Bastion moved across. Moving IDM was quite interesting, because I got in this situation where I've only got one DNS server in the UK. I've got two in the US in my my production setup, and so I needed to configure over to look at those two DNS servers, because when I was turning off the DNS server in this building, everything was getting very upset because Overt couldn't connect to the host, and so it was kind of triggering failovers, which isn't really ideal, because it meant that the migration of that host just didn't work. So I ended up cloning the host, cloning the IDM guest, copying it across, and telling Overt to also use the other DNS servers that I've got, and that seemed to do the trick. So everything is now running in Rev, and it's actually getting ready for us to be able to do something useful with it. I've got satellite running in there because my estate is running satellite at the moment. I'm going to be cutting that across to Foreman with Kitello, and we'll do a video on that, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping to automate all the provisioning of this stuff as well. Maybe stick it on GitHub or something like that, so if you want to use it you can. But we'll see kind of how everything comes together, and yeah. So thanks very much everyone, have a great day. Speak to you soon.